From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media. A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Benoski. So glad to be with you once again across FM and AM, soaring high on FM and AM. Happy to have this time with you across the Freedom Plain of Florida. If you're listening on radio, we're glad to have you. Make sure you set it to this station, because this is your destination for all things A Neighbor's Choice. And if you're listening to us on podcast or video stream, go ahead and subscribe and all that stuff. I will not say hit that bell. I just can't do that. It's just boring to say that. Everybody says that. We're tired of hitting bells. It's time to break through the confusion. It's time to break through the noise. It's time to break through all of that noise that clouds our judgment every day. That's what you've come to expect on Neighbor's Choice, and that's what you're going to get. Something new, something fresh. That's what we have in store today. And, this is a time when people are looking for answers. People want to know, what is the truth? What is the truth? How can we make sense of this world that we're in? How can we make sense of a world that feels like it's losing its mind all around us? Why is it that all of these institutions that are supposed to be trustworthy, institutions like old-fashioned media outlets, newspapers, institutions like the university system, all these different things that we used to believe we could trust to be honest with us, they're all starting to seem more and more crazy. It's because we're in a transitionary time. We're in the digital age. We're in a time of decentralization, of information, a time in which folks are trying to process so much different voices, so many different perspectives coming through all over the place. And we don't know what's true. We don't know if it's a matter of being, left or right or something else in between. We just can't make sense of it anymore. And that's what our show is trying to get through. We're trying to bring through a conversation, bring together a conversation that will not be blinded by that tribalism. We want a conversation that's clear of tribalism, that we can move tribalism out of our framework and into a framework that is centered on the human person. That's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in propping up another team to go and get power from Washington for our efforts. I'm interested in power made perfect in weakness. That's the concept I'm interested in promoting and exploring. Power made perfect in weakness. Power made perfect in weakness. That's what I'm interested in. And that means that we have to be able to look closer to our homes, closer to our places of business, closer to our neighborhoods for the answers that we're looking for. We cannot go to D.C., we cannot go to the halls of power and expect them to act in a moral way, to be pro-family, to be pro-life, to be pro-worker, pro-guy. It's not going to happen. We have to understand that power and centralizing direction always produces the worst in us, always produces the worst aspects of us, always manifests the worst in us. And that's something we have to tackle. More and more is this desire for power beyond all other considerations. So that's what we're going to talk about on Neighbor's Choice. I'm glad to be back with you. We're working on a new situation in the video stream, so if it's sounding muffled, don't worry. At neighborschoice.com, we'll have the podcast feed. We'll have the good, clean audio from our radio show. And we'll try to work this out because we're doing what we can to spread a conversation that needs to happen. It's a conversation rooted in truth. It's a conversation rooted in personhood. It's a conversation rooted in love of individual freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of association, all those different aspects of freedom. So I want to take a quick break now and we'll return and get into some of the news of the day. But let's think about what we can do in our own communities to spread a message of love, to spread a message of concern for our neighbors. And let's think about how we can do this in creative ways. We'll take a quick break and return in just a moment. Live on Neighbor's Choice. Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com. Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida. Or go to whiteoakpastures.com and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools.
How does my voice sound now? Does this sound good for you guys?
Schedule they control.
How's the volume for my voice? Let me know.
And an earning potential that is
on the video screen.
Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
You can't have a fresh outlook on the new year if you're staring through a chipped or cracked windshield. Autoglass America will fix it and give you up to $150 cash back to help pay holiday bills. With qualifying insurance, we'll come to you with mobile service and install a premium quality replacement with a lifetime.
How's this sound? Does this sound good? For those watching on video screen, we're trying a little different setup today. I don't mind if there's a little bit of dust. It's okay. I get the voice right. The volume's right.
813-96 GLASS.
How's that sound? Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski, your host. Happy to be with you here on Radio Land and Video Stream Podcast. If you're listening on Video Stream, we're trying out a little bit different setup today, so it's okay if it sounds a little weird. We'll try to work with you guys in real time doing this multimedia thing. You know, you got radio, we got FM, we've got AM, we've got HD radio. We've got podcasts, we've got video stream, and we got to go through that Sauron, that eye of Sauron, to get into Facebook and YouTube and get their stuff going through. But we're making it all work, and that's what we're doing to be able to bring all these different mediums together for a multimedia experience, a 360 interconnected experience. I want to look at this comedian Dave Smith, who he's promoted our show on his podcast, and he talks about this comment that he made. This comment that I thought was just kind of sums up the Trump impeachment story, the show trial. He says, the only thing impeachment can accomplish is to bar Trump from running again. They are terrified that after everything, Russia, COVID, inciting an insurrection, a 78-year-old Trump could run and win. They fear democracy because they know how fed up this country is with the elite. I think that's a good summary of this moment, you know. They fear democracy. They disparage democracy when democracy doesn't behave the way it wants. They disparage democracy when democracy doesn't produce the outcomes that they want. They don't want folks to bristle at their narratives when they say, hey guys, it's time to go to war. Got some more children to save around the world. You know, Barack Obama, he liked to sell you on terrible, bloody coups, bloody insurrections all over the world. That's what he did for you. That's what Biden did. That's what Clinton did. That's what Bush did. But Trump didn't sell it right. Trump didn't do it right. He was an amateur at statism in some sense. He didn't have his speech codes right. And that was too much for these clowns. These clowns that love war. It was too much. They couldn't handle it. They just couldn't take it. They had to destroy that message. They had to destroy what he represents as a symbol. And so they're trying for their second time to purge their little scapegoat out of their city forever. Because they're afraid of a 78-year-old Donald Trump. That at 78, a Donald Trump could still be a potent threat to their little clique. And it's not so much about his policy changes, but about his rhetoric changes, his aesthetic changes. Politics is about image. It's about visuals. It's about the presentation. It's about the story more than it is about the policies. Policies have an effect, you know. If you change certain policies, it will hurt certain grifters who make money off of certain regulations. Stay in the way they are. But Trump didn't really tinker too much with the fundamentals of the government and its, regulations and so forth. He did a little bit. But they really hate him because of his rhetoric. He doesn't speak their narrative. The left and the right both agree that we need to have these phony victim-garbed narratives to sell people on the status quo of corporatism. And Trump didn't use that rhetoric. He didn't use that rhetoric. He used rhetoric that was more about winners. Where are the winners? Let's go get our winners' energy back. Let's go get our machismo back. Let's go get our mojo back. And that's not a story that sells what DC wants to do. DC wants to believe that they're the heroes. They want to believe that the world just needs them to tinker around with who can be a leader around the world, and that DC will plan out the destiny of billions of people's lives in coordination with other globalist organizations to map out what leaders they should have, what values Africa should have, what policies the Middle Eastern countries should adopt, how they should do medicine, how they should talk, how they should conceive a family. They want to map everything out because they believe they can save the world. They can save the world from the darkness of reality, that they can make reality into something else through language, that they can construct a new reality based on language, based on codes, based on language codes, in other words. But it's not going to happen. The Bible talks about the idea that naming, when you name something, you define it. When you name something, you define it in a reality sense. You bring it into being in some sense. Naming is a kind of dominion. And there's this desire within folks at the halls of power in DC to name reality with a different name, to try to change reality through name. Through word games, through language, that they can tell you that gender is oppressive, that they can tell you that all the things related to differentiation as it pertains to private property, all those things are inherently oppressive by their naming of things. By naming things, that they can speak and manufacture a reality that is more perfect than reality is itself. This is the problem of those who want to change and control the world through power, through force. They believe that they're God. They believe that they can build a Tower of Babel that can reach the heavenly realms through their reason or through their name games, their word games that can reimagine history with their language, reimagine science even with their language, controlling and constructing a better world. And they really believe, a lot of them do, even at the top of these institutions of government and business and these think tanks and so forth, they really believe that they can make the world a better place by remaking it with their language constructs reality frame. But it won't work. It'll fail. It's bound to fail because they're not in charge of history. They don't understand that yet. They're too busy trying to scapegoat people who don't fit into their word games, who don't play their speech codes. They're too busy trying to play in this fantasy world in which they can cancel people based on language that they use. But you know, there's someone else in charge in history. And that someone is named Jesus. And you know, with his rules in mind, he's much more interested, not just in language, although that's important, but in flesh and blood personhood. He cares about human beings being treated with justice. And that's where these globalists, these folks that want to shepherd humanity into a better dimension through this language, this critical theory, this wokeism, I call it McWoke. These folks, they can't understand this. They don't understand that flesh and blood victims is where history is moving, that we are here to bring account for every hidden victim that has ever been pressed down by the oppressive structures of power in history, and that their word games will not silence the voices of victims, real victims, that they cannot make the voices of real victims of their machines of power go away just by playing word games. See, they want to make us feel that justice is on the march when you have folks like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the little nameless bureaucrats that are moving that whole machine forward. But we know that there are real victims behind the policies and standards of governance that Biden and Harris and their folks represent. There are victims all over the world who cry out for justice, to be heard. Victims in Libya, victims in Syria, victims in Iraq, victims in our own towns, our own communities, who have been betrayed and beaten down by the policies of the people that the television tells you to worship. We know that there are victims from these people's behaviors. And there's nothing the television, there's nothing the social media oligarchs can do to hide their voices. We hear the voices of the corrupt rigged system of corporatism, and we will let them speak their word. We will let them be heard. We do this on this program, A Neighbor's Choice, but other programs will do it increasingly so as we begin to reveal that Jesus is the master of history, and these pretenders to the messianic frame of reality, they do not know that which they are messing with. They do not understand that Jesus has said power is made perfect in weakness, and no amounts of attempts to coerce people to do what you want them to do, to subjugate people, to cancel people with your pathetic, impotent attempts will do anything to stop that which Jesus has set into motion in history, which is that human beings will have to learn to get along without coercing, without scapegoating, without subjugating their neighbors, and there's nothing the petty little wannabe tyrants can do about it. They can pretend to be little messiahs all day long. They can pretend to be woke. Oh, I'm awakened to what? To Biden's 50 years of wars? That's what you awoke to? Wow. Oh, they have constructed for us to buy into. It's ridiculous. Nobody buys it. They have such a that believe in their conception of a messianic state, such a small and insignificant, growing, increasingly insignificant group of fundamentalist adherents who believe what the television tells them is actually true and noble and righteous and worthwhile. They believe that, but that's an increasingly small number of folks. The rest of the world is waking up to the reality that the establishment is out of ammo, that they have tried and tried and tried to guise up their power grabs, their grifting for corporations under the guise of we are the voices of the victims, but we see through it increasingly so. And so we have to be able to have a conversation in which we can guide people to true forgiveness, true grace, true mercy, true reconciliation between neighbors, not this fake stuff that the McWoke left wants to offer. That all it does is distract victims from being able to repent of the sacrificial machine of the establishment. All we spend all of our time is fighting over who's been most victimized by the status quo rather than working together to stop the victimization itself. Everybody thinks they're a victim, and so therefore they feel entitled to victimize others. But what Jesus helps us see is that we are no longer victims. And so therefore we have no longer any desire to have to victimize others to get revenge. The McWoke establishment, on the other hand, wants us to stay in a mental prison of perpetual victimhood. They don't want us to flee it. They don't want us to get out. They don't want us to love our neighbor. They don't want to see people across different racial backgrounds to hug each other in true love and solidarity, not with a desire to have violent overthrow of the capitalist order. That's nonsense. That's a fairy tale that has hidden millions of people who have died horrible deaths with that stupid narrative trying to push its justice into the system by force. No. But people in solidarity through love of each other because they're made in the image of a God who loves them unconditionally. And there's nothing that these folks who want to add conditions to love can ever do to stop that. They can never stop that which has been unleashed by Jesus' personhood revolution. They cannot put back what Jesus has broken, which is he's opened up that we do not have to tolerate scapegoating of our neighbors. We do not have to tolerate collective violence. We don't have to tolerate the criminalization of every nonviolent thought and choice and action we can conceive of. We do not have to tolerate preemptive war in perpetuity like Biden and Kamala Harris and others represent. We don't have to tolerate it. We can say enough is enough. It's time to love our neighbors as ourselves. And that means putting our skin in the game, not expecting politicians to be our savior, and also not scapegoating our politicians when things go wrong. How many times do people scapegoat politicians, whoever's in power, when their job doesn't work out, or their career doesn't work out, or their relationship doesn't work out, or their family situation doesn't work out? That has to go too. Politicians are not just oppressing us with their bad policies, they're also slowing us down to being able to see clearly because we end up wanting to scapegoat them for all of our problems as well. That's the whole project of politics that's falling apart. And it's time to grow up. It's time to love our neighbors as ourselves. I'm David Gronowski. We'll take a quick break and return in just a moment.
Ronald Reagan would turn over in his grave if he saw what's going on today.
Crazy things are happening.
You cannot be afraid. You've got to stand up for what you believe is right.
But one thing is for sure.
You can't trust anybody.
For talk, news, and information, you can count on us.
Enough is enough. I mean, I almost blew a gasket.
Good for the country.
I know what I'm talking about. A lot of wackos out there.
Your connection to talk about it. The all-new News Talk 1040 WH.
At the impeachment trial, House managers and defense attorneys debating whether it's constitutional to try a former president. Trump attorney David Schoen accused Democrats of playing politics.
They've made clear in public statements that what they really want to accomplish here in the name of the Constitution is to bar Donald Trump from ever running for political office again. But this is an affront to the Constitution, no matter who they target today.
Earlier, House managers focused on Trump's actions ahead of the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol.
The House impeachment manager is replaying videos of the mob attacking the Capitol. Trump's lawyers saying he can't be convicted since he's no longer president. House impeachment manager Jamie Raskin.
They want to call the trial over before any evidence is even introduced.
Congressman Raskin telling the Senate the document they swore to uphold does indeed let them try and convict the president even out of office. Andy Field, ABC News, Washington.
With continuing coverage, the impeachment trial, I'm Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski, your host. So glad to be with you again as we explore the news together. You can email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. That's hello@aneighborschoice.com if you have any comments or guest suggestions. It's something that I think we have to be able to explore together. We have to be able to have a conversation that's not rooted in politics, but it's rooted in skin in the game. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. There's a comment here that kind of explains the problem with politics, where someone says, the Wuhan Institute of Virology said it was not their fault, referring to this possible outcome that this virus could have been something that escaped outside of that lab on accident, some kind of mistake or something. But that just goes to show that who are the folks who are supposed to be examining the origins of the COVID-19. The WHO has appointed people who have actually been involved in the funding of that Wuhan virology lab. So how is that in any way a legitimate and fair way to evaluate the facts? But that's what happens when we have politicians and government agencies managing all these things for us. All they do is get into, passing the buck, passing the blame on to somebody else or something else, denying responsibility, because it's not their money they're playing with. It's not, they don't want to take responsibility. It's just something to, hey, pass the buck off to somebody else. Somebody else did this, not us. It's not our fault, and that just doesn't work. It doesn't work for folks who say, hey, wait a second. If you guys are working on gain of function, virus research in which you are taking viruses from coronaviruses from the animal kingdom and seeing if you can make them cross over into human cells to see if you can come up with, medical solutions to prevent such a scenario from happening in the real world, and then all of a sudden that very type of virus shows up unleashed, and you say, oh, no, it's only a wet market. That's the only possibility. Wet market can't be the lab. And then you say, okay, well, let's have an honest conversation about the evidence. Oh, no, can't do that. Then they appoint people who have actually had, again, been involved in the funding of that lab to be the people who are going to be the auditors of the origins of this virus breakout. This is what government does. This is what unaccountable corporations and nonprofits in collusion with government do. They don't want to take responsibility when they make mistakes, grievous mistakes, horrifying mistakes, world-affecting mistakes possibly. And again, we don't have direct evidence one way or another, but we can't even seem to have an honest conversation about the facts on the ground to be able to determine and ascertain if perhaps there's enough preponderance of evidence or circumstantial evidence to point to the Wuhan virology lab being the epicenter of this outbreak, the beginning of this situation. But because there's no skin in the game, because government and its cronies don't have to be responsible. They don't have to have true accountability with the public. What do? They just pass the buck. Oh, it's not. No, we looked at it. Nothing to see here. It's not our fault. It's not our fault. Nothing to see here. We're only good guys here. We can't make any mistakes. Even if you just use basic logic, no, that doesn't apply here. We have no responsibility for anything that happens. That's the case for so many problems. I talk all the time. People say they want single-payer health care, right? But single-payer nutrition science is what got us all mostly sick in the first place, right? Single-payer nutrition science, like the food pyramid and the subsidies of garbage food like seed oils, what they now call plant-based oils, that those are the things that got us into the problem to begin with. Those are the things that are correlated with this increase in chronic illnesses, what we call the disease of Western society, diseases of Western, industrial societies. It's the societies that adopt our seed oils that we've subsidized with great taxpayer expense, that we promote through taxpayer expense with single-payer nutrition guidelines and papers that reaffirm the establishment perspective on nutrition. It's countries that adopt those seed oils and processed sugars and flours that we subsidize in our country. Those that adopt those things increasingly find themselves having the same chronic illnesses that we are plagued by. But oh no, because sacred government and its crony allies have such a nice, comfy little monopoly telling us what we're supposed to eat, telling us what's good nutrition, they have too much invested power in their monopoly to course correct, even if they want to know the truth. There's just too much incentives to not know what they don't know, to not consider, maybe we made a big mistake. Maybe we shouldn't have listened to Ansel Keys, who had a bogus pseudoscientific theory that became the major attack against saturated fat, dietary, consumption of dietary animal fat in our lifestyle. That was demonized for decades, and it became a sacrosanct sacred cow, part of the pun, for official science and nutritional understanding. And what happened is it detoured people into bad nutritional practices where we're consuming massive amounts of linoleic acid, which is found in vegetable oils, seed oils, plant oils, all the same thing. And it's found, and so that becomes baked into our dietary habits, which ends up creating all these in my opinion, that there's a strong correlation that suggests possible causation, especially when you look at some of the scientific literature where they test and they see what linoleic acid does to rats and how it creates all these diseases and obesity and diabetes and cancers and so forth when they increase linoleic acid consumption in mice and the experiments that they've done. There's a correlation that this is what's going on with humans and our consumption of seed oils brought to you by single-payer nutrition. So, we got to be able to have these conversations in an honest way. And we are having those conversations, but we need to have them increasingly so into the mainstream. That's why I spend time doing this show in radio. I don't want to be just preaching to the choir and podcast. Podcast is a medium that tends to attract those who already are searching out key terms that are already kind of in your wheelhouse. They already kind of agree with what you're saying. But with radio, we have the opportunity to really reach outside of the choir and bring these needed conversations about nutrition and the role that government, negatively introduces into a subject matter like nutrition. We got to be able to have these conversations in the mainstream. We've got to be able to have these conversations in the broadcast mass market media, which is why we're doing this right now with you on radio. Because these conversations are so important. They're life-saving potentially. And they're economy saving potentially, because the whole country, on some folks on the left and the right, are saying, hey, it's time to have single-payer health care. And I have to tell them, no. Single-payer health care can't fix what single-payer nutrition science broke. And that includes the misinformation and the malinvestment that they have done for decades into propping up and promoting the consumption of seed oils, processed flours, processed sugars. These things have done a horrible number on the human body, and they have been associated with all the chronic illnesses that people are scared of getting, and therefore they run to, symptom masking pharmaceutical solutions that don't truly address the holistic metabolic dysfunction, usually centered around mitochondrial health in the cells of our body. They just don't adequately address those issues in our reigning paradigm of pharmaceutical health. And so people can say all day, oh, I want government to be more involved in my healthcare, but if they don't understand what they're getting wrong, the more involvement they have, the more they're going to retard our ability to move past failed paradigms of health. And if they retard our ability to move beyond failed paradigms of health, then what they're doing in effect is preventing us from healing illnesses that affect us deeply. Illnesses that bring a lot of tragedy to families that we shouldn't have to deal with. And it's good to have righteous indignation, to see suffering that shouldn't be happening. It is a good and healthy emotion to feel that way. It means you're a human. It means you have empathy. And that's okay. It's okay to have empathy. It's okay to feel upset at what's happened to our country, what's happened to our neighbors, our family members. That's a good, healthy emotion. But we cannot allow politicians and political ideologies, which are just religions dressed up as some kind of philosophy. We cannot allow ideologies to distract us and make us direct our attentions and energies to their grand schemes, where they will use ultimate power to correct all the healthcare illnesses that we have. No. We have to understand that these folks can't save us. They're not the Messiah. They don't know what they don't know. Even if they're in their best intentions, they just don't know what they don't know. And that a paradigm of medicine, which cost $1 billion in 10 to 15 years to get an approval from the FDA, will naturally preclude things that can't be patented. Things like changing your diet with a metabolic intervention. Things like changing or using generic, older drugs that are past their patent. And so, there's not a lot of money to direct attention and research into those drug options for illnesses. Because if it's not patentable, then how can you recoup the cost of sinking down $1 billion in 10 to 15 years as a company doing the double-blind studies that the FDA requires, only to have everybody else and their brother be able to use and sell and market that drug for that cause too? You see, they have created these perverse incentives which direct all medical research and health funding into one narrow prism of medicine. That doesn't mean there's nothing good there, but if you put all the attention on things that can be patented, like new therapeutics and so forth, then you're going to miss out on all the other possible health, modalities that should be explored to be able to find solutions for diseases. Like, again, metabolic therapy, therapeutic ketosis, like generic drugs that are very inexpensive for people, especially who don't have health insurance or don't have good health coverage. But we can't have this conversation until we all agree to set aside politics, put it aside, and let's look at each other in the eyes and say, you know what, you may be a McWoker, or you may be a Trumper, or you may be a liberal or a conservative, but you know what, we're still human beings. And we don't want to see our families suffer from diseases. We don't want to see our families suffer from, financial bondage with debt to pay for failing medicine that doesn't actually address the root cause of so many of the illnesses that we're seeing. That's what can bring people together. I'm just using one example, health, but that's a huge thing. As you can see in the headlines, as you can see in world affairs, health and medicine is a huge component to how governments and economies and our lives and everything end up panning out. And this is an area where we can come together, cross these ideological boundaries and say, you know what, let's put aside some of our debates and let's work together to actually find real answers to help our family members and our friends have healthier lives where their bodies feel great, mental health is improved by just modifying a few things, eliminating things out of their lifestyle, out of their diet. That can be a huge game changer for a lot of people. So we're going to take a quick break. I'm David Gronowski. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. We'll be back after this short message. David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their...
Does everybody enjoy the sound levels now for my voice and the radio feed?
Build a career.
Doing a little different setup today, so we're just trying to get it all figured out for
and
today.
An earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender. Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski, your host. We're live on FM and AM on Radio Land, as well as video stream and podcast. I want to look at this story here. Andy No, who he gets a lot of hate from the far left because they don't like him exposing some of the bully tactics of Antifa. You know, they want to make that a sacred endeavor, that you cannot question that sacred, crowd and its righteous indignation. You know, they don't understand that Jesus says, do not resist evil with violence. They reject that. They want vengeance. They want vengeance, right? And so that's why you see them getting really into, demonizing people who call them out when they're violent. But he reports that police in Bellingham, Washington, have released body camera footage showing what happened when Antifa attacked them at their autonomous encampment outside City Hall on the 28th of January. Days prior, the Antifa stormed their way inside, causing the mayor to be evacuated. And Tara La Rosa, I guess she's an MMA fighter, I think, she said on Twitter, how is this any different from the storming of the Capitol? Why is Antifa allowed to do it? And that's a good question, isn't it? It's something we've talked a little bit about before in the past. Why is it that Antifa is allowed to do these vicious stuff and they get a cover by the media? Why would giant corporations want to, massage reality to make ugly bullying
from one team, okay, but when it gets ugly and mean from another team, it's somehow just perfectly, if one team does it, it's the worst thing ever. If another team does it, it's the worst. It's okay. And we just can't have that kind of double standard in our society. All violence should be condemned. All violence should be rejected. All collective violence should be looked down upon. But media wants to make one type of collective violence, well, they're just trying to shake things up for a righteous cause. Whereas another type of ugly violence, like what happened in the Capitol, well, those are villains, those are monsters, but the other team that does collective violence, Antifa, they're okay. That's just not acceptable. All of this should be condemned. But because Antifa does their violence in the name of victims, because they victimize people in the righteous, holy cause of trying to stop victimization, at least that's their brand. The media says, well, it's just not as bad. They have a righteous cause. So if you do horrible things, but you say, I'm doing it to liberate oppressed people, then if you just say that's what you're doing it for, you get a pass. You get a total pass. If you say, I'm doing this horrible bullying because that is what makes victims have justice, then somehow if you just use that rhetoric, that's enough for the corporate press. That's enough for them to say, we've got your back, Antifa. I call it PROFA. It's PROFA. They're pro-fascism. They're not anti-fascist. They're PROFA. And that's what we have to, name things correctly if we're going to have an honest conversation. If they're PROFA, if they were really Antifa, if they were anti-fascist, how come they didn't come out in full force when Biden, who's been an advocate of corporatism, which is just another form of, corporate fascism, basically. How come they didn't come out and do a temper tantrum for him when he won? How come they didn't, if they really care about challenging the merger of big government with big business, which is what fascism really is about, how come they were not speaking out and making their little temper tantrums that they do when those corporatists won with the Biden administration? It's interesting, huh? So they're PROFA. Language constructs reality, or at least it really helps illuminate it when it's true. And that's the truth, is that they're not Antifa, they're PROFA. So let's get our words right. Let's get our language correct. Let's make sure our language is actually correlating to reality. Because that's where so much of the problems we have today is that truth has been banned from the public square. You're not allowed to talk about truth. Truth is, Ron Paul says it well. He says, truth is treason in the empire of lies, right? And when you have an empire filled with lies, then truth becomes a treasonous act. And the problem with the establishment is they only know one button, and that's expel, 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 or what they call cancel. But they think cancel has a little bit more stylistic use. If you say expel culture, or purge culture, it's just a little bit closer to home. You can't use that word. You have to use a softer word like cancel. We're just canceling a subscription, But the word purge culture is actually more accurate. And when you have a purge culture, it only knows one weapon to deal with problems. Purge. You see? And what happens is that when all you do is press purge on people, it makes people pay attention to bad ideas that they shouldn't have paid attention to. It gives it a martyr's energy. It's the Streisand effect. Because people say, well, what are you banning Parler for? What are you banning this guy for, or this person for, or this lady? Why are you doing this? And so that's the confusing part of our time, is that there are bad ideas that the establishment purges, but they shouldn't have purged them, because by purging them, they make people pay more attention to those bad ideas because, again, we're in Jesus's fishbowl. And Jesus was purged. Jesus was expelled. Jesus was ostracized outside of the camp. And so anybody who gets expelled like that, good ideas and bad ideas, they all get a kind of martyr's energy from those who are watching the purge happen. And that's where bad ideas fester and get more power, because when you're purge every little thing, then people say, well, you know what, I'm just going to go look at anything that you guys want to ban or purge, I'm going to take another look at. And it gives energy, it gives oxygen to toxic ideologies. But it also gives power to good ideas, like free speech, like being anti-war, like being, against endless surveillance and endless wars. It gives energy to the voices, like, Ron Paul was blocked out of his Facebook. For what? This is a man who spends his entire career trying to tell people, let's not go to endless wars. Let's be like the Prince of Peace, Jesus. And Facebook, in an act of bigotry, apparently, or at least sure looked like it, says, no, Ron Paul, you can't post for a while. I mean, he's just one guy. We've talked about it before, that one of the guests that we have on a lot would Bring Our Troops Home.us, a group that is a bipartisan coalition of veterans that want to end the endless wars. They tried to buy an ad on YouTube and Google blocked them. They said it was partisan. No, it wasn't. The event that they were promoting had both Democrats and libertarians and Republicans speaking out against war policy, not any particular political or partisan thing, right? But no, that wasn't enough for YouTube. They had to purge a voice of peace from being able to promote their content on their platform. So this is all going to be backfiring in increasingly spectacular ways. You saw it even with GameStop, right? Where, GameStop, they had to demonize them as, must have been Russian people, must have been Trump racists doing the GameStop short deal. I mean, they're just running out of ammo, and we're all watching it in real time and saying, guys, get off. It's enough. Stop. Stop trying to scapegoat. It's not working. You're failing at it. It's time to just trying to find another way to get along. It's time to find another way to talk. Demonizing, scapegoating, otherizing people, that just doesn't work. Establishment left. Try something else. You're going to have to, because the more you keep pushing the purge button, the scapegoat button, the more it's going to backfire and undermine your credibility for lots of folks who would otherwise be okay with going along with your proposals. And that's not how you gain power, is it? It's not going to work. You're going to ostracize people more and more. So that's it for hour one of today's broadcast. We'll be back in just a moment. But just think about that as we look at this new time ahead, how we can make sense of the world without relying on this purge button and also reacting to it. Can't do the purge button and can't be reacting to it either, because both things are errors. We'll be back in just a moment, but for now, Godspeed.
Your home for news, talk, and information. 1040 WHBO Pinellas Park, Tampa Bay's all new News Talk 1040.
It's the only way I get news.
From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. On the unprecedented first day of the second impeachment trial of former President Trump, House managers presenting evidence from the day of the siege at the U.S. Capitol, along with emotional accounts, arguing that senators, many who witnessed the violence, have a constitutional duty to try and convict the former president on the charge of inciting the insurrection. House lead impeachment manager Jamie Raskin.
Senators, this cannot be our future. This cannot be the future of America. We cannot have presidents inciting and mobilizing mob violence against our government and our institutions because they refuse the will of the people under the Constitution of the United States.
Raskin recalling where he was in that moment, including bringing his family there that day, where people died, he says, including an officer beaten by an American flag. Trump's defense team arguing that the trial is unconstitutional.
After a graphic 13-minute video showing the violent Capitol attack was played on the Senate floor, former President Trump's defense attorney Bruce Castor said this.
You will not hear any member of the team representing former President Trump say anything but in the strongest possible way denounce the violence of the rioters.
But
how's the sound level,
the impeachment
guys?
trial itself is
How's the sound now?
unconstitutional since Trump is no longer in office. Elizabeth Schulze, ABC News, Washington.
The White House distancing itself from the trial, keeping the focus on the pandemic. President Biden today meeting with leaders for his economic relief package. Next week, he'll make his first official trip as president to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In Minnesota, 5 people were shot and injured at a health clinic in the city of Buffalo, about 40 miles outside of Minneapolis. Wright County sheriffs say that the suspect is 67-year-old Gregory Ulrich. He's in custody and say that they've got calls that date back to 2003. No motive yet. You're listening to ABC News.
Do you check your Google search results regularly? You should. People often get their first impression of you or your business online. Negative comments on the internet can impact your life and your livelihood. Take control of your online reputation. Get your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com. It may reveal negative posts from an ex-employee, upset patient or client, news article, legal issue, or even exposed personal information right there in your Google search results. Uncover what's lurking on the internet about you with reputationdefender.com's patented scan and get your free reputation report card. Or for immediate assistance with your reputation, call 800-401-6681. Our cutting-edge technology helps make your Google search results look their best. Call 800-401-6681. That's 800-401-6681. 800-401-6681. Or take the free scan at reputationdefender.com.
As people celebrate Mary Wilson, co-founder of the Supremes, we're hearing from her in her own words.
Just 2 days before her death.
Well, this is Black History Month.
Mary Wilson posting a video on her YouTube channel talking about Black History Month and many of the Supremes milestones that came in February, and revealing that in honor of the 60th anniversary of the Supremes, Universal is releasing
new recordings, Mary Wilson recordings.
She's smiling, clearly happy to be taking a stroll down memory lane. No sign that we'd lose her just 2 days later.
Thank you. Take care, guys. Bye.
Jason Nathanson, ABC News, Hollywood.
Dozens of civil rights and advocacy groups are calling on the Biden administration to stop federal executions immediately. Those organizations sending a letter to President Biden urging him to take action on his promise of ensuring justice in the criminal legal system. The Bureau of Prisons carried out 13 executions under former President Trump's administration, more than any other administration. President Biden is against the death penalty, but has not said what steps he will take. People in France forced to change their eating habits amid this pandemic. Office workers can now eat lunch at their desks, something previously forbidden under the French labor code. Officials with the labor ministry said that they may...
How do you like this sound level? Does that sound good for the video stream?
Now, an effort to maintain...
I'm just doing different little things here and there.
...workers to eat in areas dedicated for work. This is ABC News.
Ready to create your own income with your own goal-based business where there's no such thing as getting laid off? If a billionaire entrepreneur spent 5 years and $20 million searching for the next big trend, wouldn't you want to know what he found? If you're serious about making money from home without having to leave home, then write this down. www.goherenext.com. You decide your income. Get the facts now. Goherenext.com.
Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste.
How's that sound?
They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com. com.
Your home for news, talk, and information. 1040 WHBO Pinellas Park. Tampa Bay's all new News Talk 1040.
It's the only way I get news.
From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. And I'm your host, your neighbor, David Garnosky. So glad to be back with you again across FM and AM, where we're challenging toxic groupthink with the principles of personhood guiding us. That's what we're here for, right? We don't want to have the same old groupthink, same old nonsense. And that's what we've gotten used to from so much of the media. It's like pick a team and start going to town against hating on the other. And we just don't have time for that. You know, what the media does is it tries to say that we are the voice of protecting the marginalized other. But in their zealous self-righteousness, they forget that they're actually marginalizing a lot of other people. They're actually marginalizing people who don't have power. And their attempts at trying to manufacture reality in which they can quarantine all human guilt into one gender or one race or one country or one civilization or one religion or one type of family, structure where there's a nuclear family or what have you. The idea that they can quarantine all problems by scapegoating just one institution or one culture or one this or that. It's just the biggest joke of otherizing people. It doesn't work. It's based on vengeance. It's not based on reality. It's not based on something that actually can give people real justice. Real justice involves healing. It involves being able to reconcile with someone who's offended you. And you don't get that with the purge culture, do you? You don't get that with ostracization culture, do you? Right? You get nothing but, delete, ban, demonize. That's all you get. You don't get this thing that we find with Christian culture, where we have forgiveness, we have mercy, we have coming together of people who have conflict and saying, hey, where can we find commonality? Where can we find peace? Where can we find areas to work together on? Instead, politics just divides us. It just increasingly divides us. I want to read this story of an example of how someone on the left can have a lot of things to offer folks. And that's Glenn Greenwald. He has a Substack. He has a story out about Biden appointee Neera Tanden spread the conspiracy that Russian hackers changed Hillary's 2016 votes to Trump. How can Democrats and allied media outlets credibly oppose unhinged conspiracy theories and attacks on U.S. election legitimacy while empowering its worst purveyors? And this was back in November 30th of last year. But it just goes to show that the establishment doesn't really have the interests of those on the left or the right in mind with their choices. They want to keep the steady status quo going. Glenn Greenwald says the list of sociopathic and even monstrous acts from Tannen is too long to list comprehensively. She punched one of her own employees, a reporter for CAP's now abolished blog Think Progress, after he had the temerity to ask Hillary Clinton in 2008 about her support for the Iraq War. Tannen claimed she merely had pushed, not punched her undeferential reporter. In 2011, as the Obama administration was participating in the NATO bombing of Libya, Tannen suggested in internal CAP discussions that the U.S. steal Libya's oil as a way of reducing the U.S. deficit. A story I was able to report only because Tannen had abused and alienated so many of her employees
that they worked together to leak her incriminating emails to me. During her tenure as CAP's president, Tannen accepted millions of dollars from the regime of the United Arab Emirates, which built Dubai and Abu Dhabi using slave labor, along with massive donations from Facebook, Google, Microsoft, JP Morgan, the Walton family, and Michael Bloomberg, while hiding the identity of some of her think tank's largest donors. A huge chapter on the NYPD's abusive policies toward Muslims under Mayor Michael Bloomberg was removed from a CAP report after Bloomberg donated more than $1 million to Tannen's organization, and he continued to donate even more after that courteous gesture. She ordered the supposedly independent journalists of the Think Progress blog, including Muslim writers, to stop writing critically about Israel. After key CAP donors, including Barney Frank's sister Ann Lewis and longtime Clinton advisor Howard Wolfson, complained. She and Wolfson plotted in 2016 how to weaponize female journalists and people of color against Hillary's critics, as well as to use their identity to stigmatize and thus stop undesirable coverage from the New York Times. In 2018, she outed a CAP employee at a staff-wide meeting who had filed an anonymous complaint of sexual harassment and retaliation against one of Tannen's male allies. Secure with her UAE and corporate-funded large salary, she has long urged cuts to Social Security. The list goes on and on. So in other words, he's suggesting that this person is not someone that has the left's interests or many people's interests in mind. You know, this is someone who wants the corporatism that's enriching the powerful at the expense of everybody else to go full steam ahead. And he goes on to say Tannen owes her entire career to the patronage of Hillary Clinton, and her devotion to Hillary approaches restraining orders levels of creepiness. She beams with pride about Hillary Clinton going on the Senate floor in 2004 to explain her steadfast opposition to marriage equality for same-sex couples on the grounds that, quote, marriage is a sacred bond between a man and a woman, and, quote, exists between a man and a woman going back into the midst of history for the primary purpose of raising children. Just a few short years before Democrats changed their views on this, after which it instantly became the hallmark of an unreconstructed, hateful bigot to say this. So Glenn's pointing out the baseless moral stridency that fuels the establishment left and their vitriolic, changing on a dime and then vitriolically hating anybody who said the same thing they said when it becomes politically advantageous for them to switch their views. So she just goes on. He goes on to talk about how basically this Tannen lady who Biden wants to put in power basically was spewing a lot of lies and nonsense that Russians were hacking the election machines. And she's spread this conspiracy because she couldn't believe that Hillary had lost. She spread it and it got picked up in a lot of circles and a lot of other people echoed this. And it was based on nothing, based on no good evidence, based on nothing but conspiracy and paranoia. And so, Glenn Greenwald's pointing out that how can folks in the media demonize other folks for questioning some of the election integrity of this latest election when they propped up the voices of baseless conspiracy for years, like this individual in discussion here? And how can folks really take them seriously in their quest to be socially just when they are putting in the same old establishment voices who are always pushing for war, pushing for bad policies, pushing for policies that hurt the poor and hurt the middle class and enrich the few? It doesn't make any sense, does it? But that's politics for you. It is a madhouse. It's chaos. Let's take a quick break and return in just a moment, live on A Neighbor's Choice. Back in just a moment.
Hello, this is David Kronosky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code Maybe.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
Do you despise lawyers? That may be the case until you need one. If you've been in an auto accident and need legal advice, go to the local attorneys that have served Tampa Bay families for over 28 years. Catania and Catania. They are family owned. They understand your legal situation. When you need legal representation, Catania and Catania will care for your case from the beginning to the end of representation. You won't need to worry. Catania and Catania will represent you through the entire process. Auto or motorcycle accidents are too frequent in Florida. Catania and Catania. They don't get paid if you don't get paid. Referrals on request. Contact Catania and Catania. Putting families first. Offices, Tampa. An attorney spokesperson.
You can't have a fresh outlook on the new year if you're staring through a chipped or cracked windshield. Autoglass America will fix it and give you up to $150 cash back to help pay holiday bills. With qualifying insurance, we'll come to you with mobile service and install a premium quality replacement with a lifetime warranty at no cost to you. Get a great outlook on the new year with a new windshield and New Year's cash from Autoglass America. 813-96-GLASS. 813-96-GLASS.
So the trial continues. So interesting for a show like mine that talks about how much of politics is performance of rituals, these baked-in rituals that we've kept going in society anthropologically for thousands of years to bind ourselves together. That's what the word religion in the Latin means, to bind together. And we bind ourselves together So we're playing some nice music right now, but we bind ourselves together by finding a mutually shared enemy that gives us some catharsis if we beat up and purge and scapegoat out of our society. That's the origins of politics. Okay, we're going to cut the music or what? Okay. So we bind ourselves together based on our mutual enemies, based on our mutual villains that we make our villains that bind us into a sense of camaraderie that we have to defeat. And that's what we're having to deal with today, is that people say, you know what? I'd rather just hate somebody that's not even in office now rather than actually solve problems. We have people unemployed. We have people whose livelihoods have been destroyed because of the political responses to this virus. We have folks who feel like they're drowning in debt because of student loans. We have people who are afraid to have kids because they don't think there's a better future on the horizon. We have a lot of different stuff like this. And we don't have a lot of people wanting to be serious for how to deal with them. We don't have a lot of people who are serious about actually stopping the blame games, stopping the demonization, and turning to solutions that can be win-win for everybody involved. That's just not attractive to people. People are more attracted to hate than they are for solving problems. It's irrational in some sense. It's irrational. So, what do? What do you do when everybody around you keeps losing their minds with hate? What do? I've never seen so many people in real life, people who I never thought were very political. All of a sudden they become political. I've seen it on both the left and the right. I've seen people who I never heard say a word about politics my whole life. I've known them. And all of a sudden they're deeply, deeply involved in, whatever Tucker Carlson's saying or Fox News, or, they're really deeply involved and they're very, very angry about the way things are going. And then I've never seen people on the other side for the first time who are deeply, deeply vitriolically hateful to anybody who doesn't hate Trump like them. If you don't hate Trump, you are a monster. And when you point out facts, it doesn't make any sense. They just can't register because they're caught up in a kind of religious ecstasy. It feels good to feel united in their hatred. It feels good to shift the shame that people have for their own failings, their own mistakes, their own prejudices and stereotypes and things that they harbor in their heart. It feels good to just let it all out on one person or one movement. And that helps a lot of people manage their own stress, manage their own tension, their own disappointments. But it doesn't help solve problems, does it? I've seen people who say, anything that happened during the Antifa protests for the George Floyd death, there's nothing wrong with that because they were doing something for a noble cause. As if, again, if you name something and say, well, we're doing this for George Floyd, therefore any kind of violence, blowing up of, burning of buildings, beating people who are in the way, shopkeepers, all of that is totally okay because the name of the cause was righteous. But then when you say, excuse me, let's not make light of people being hurt and their businesses being destroyed. And let's also at the same time recognize that a man shouldn't lose his life for passing a $20 bill that's counterfeit when the Federal Reserve prints trillions of dollars every year that debases our currency as well. So why should we treat people in such vulgar, violent ways for some small thing like that? We can have those conversations, but it requires people being of sound mind, of not losing their self in madness and anger. Anger, when it's out of control, is a madness. That's what you get the word madness from. Losing control of your emotions to the point where you can't see straight. All you can see is hate. All you can see is castigation. That's not going to alleviate anybody's problems. It's not going to solve any of the justice issues that people feel need to be solved. Folks on the left who want justice should be coming on to A Neighbor's Choice. We're the place where we're actually having the voices of the victims of our justice system. People have been locked away for first-time nonviolent offenses, sometimes with life sentences. We have them call in onto this show before the COVID stuff made it impossible for people to call out because they're on constant lockdown. That's big government for you, but don't tell that to the big government voting justice folks. They don't even register that. But if Biden and Harris really were coming with real justice, why aren't they pardoning and freeing every nonviolent person right now who's in prison during this COVID, where they don't have the proper nutrition, the proper exposure to sunlight? Vitamin D3 is essential to having a healthy immune system. Proper nutrition is essential to having a healthy immune system. If these folks who were burning the streets because they wanted Biden to be in office, not Trump, because of justice issues, if they really cared about justice, why aren't they demanding that Biden and Harris come through for them in their promise of justice and pardon every nonviolent person in prison today, especially given this extra incentive with this COVID running around the prisons where people are not able to eat proper nutrition, they're not able to get proper sleep, they're not able to get proper sanitation and social distancing. All the things that the left preach are essential on the outside because it's out of sight, out of mind in prison under Biden and Harris. Oh, nothing to see here. See, they don't want to have the conversation that I'm having. Well, maybe some of them do, but the folks who want to use this justice stuff just for pure power, they don't want to have the real deal show up. What A Neighbor's Choice represents is the real deal. They can't handle the real justice reform conversation. It's too unsettling. They like to feel like, oh, I voted Trump out, therefore I'm a good guy. No, you're not. You are a stooge. Doesn't matter if it's Trump or Biden. The same corrupt system is still in place. And you voting for Biden and then doing nothing to speak out as he presides over people, hundreds of thousands of people potentially being destroyed by a justice system that does not properly allow for social distancing and hygiene and nutrition and sunlight and all the things necessary to be safe from a new virus. You could just smell the pathetic hypocrisy in the air with this stuff. And we have to be able to grow up from this. I mean, goodness gracious, we can talk about scoring points against other sides and all this stuff. And look, we're all tempted to do that. It's always easy to just take pot shots, right? But on this program, we actually deal with people who are victimized by this unjust justice system. And they're not getting any help from Biden. And that's on the folks who hired Biden. That's on them. It's on everybody who participates in perpetuating the illusion that the status quo is somehow tolerable if we do it and do our policies in the name of victims, even though we do nothing for actual real victims. They don't want to have the real conversation. They can't handle it. But I think a lot of folks who listen to their rhetoric on the McWoke left, if they hear our message, I think they'll come around to the real message of justice and peace and personhood. We just got to present it with conviction and with compassion. We'll take a quick break and return after this short message.
There is all kinds of lunacy going on. The madness of 2020.
Weekdays 11 to 2.
I'm just so fed up with these Democrats. It's unbelievable.
Get it straight from Chris Plant.
They're so hypocritical. It makes me sick.
It's the Chris Plant Show.
This is just got me going off.
And the left is waging war against the police in the United States.
Telling it like it is.
You should be thanked profusely for getting to the point. You're a voice of reason in the sea of idiots.
The Chris Plant Show, weekdays 11 to 2. News Talk 1040, WHPO.
The second impeachment trial of former President Trump will continue tomorrow now that senators voted 56 to 44 that the proceedings are constitutional. The lead impeachment manager, Maryland Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin.
You will not be hearing extended lectures from me because our case is based on cold, hard facts.
Mr. Trump's lawyers argued the proceedings were unconstitutional and cited their client's First Amendment rights. Lead defense attorney David Schoen accusing the senator presiding over the trial, Patrick Leahy, of being biased.
The presiding officer, respectfully, already has publicly announced his fixed view before hearing any argument or evidence that Mr. Trump must be convicted on the article of impeachment before the Senate, and indeed that members in both parties have an obligation to vote to convict as well.
The trial will resume at noon tomorrow with continuing coverage, the impeachment trial. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
Hello, David Gronowski here. We're live on A Neighbor's Choice. So when have you ever heard a show that wants to do a message of reconciliation, you know? Look, it's easy, and we all fall into it. I do too, where you get caught up in, getting into the rhetorical back and forth, right? And there's a place to have a healthy little bit of a joust. But when the whole culture has become nothing but jousting and taking shots at people, and it just becomes too boring and too baked into the status quo, right? But when have you ever heard a conversation where we say, hey, how can we promote peacemaking and healing? Here I am on a medium that involves not just podcasting and video streaming, which we're working through some audio kinks today with, and we'll get it all figured out, but also, in a medium like radio. Talk radio has been treated as a, kind of a carnival, kind of a extreme place with anger and aggression, right? But that's what the corporate TV media has painted them as, and some of that's true, right? There's a lot of overheated, clownish name-calling and stuff that's been par for the course for a lot of folks in talk radio. And we can all get caught up. I call them the woke McWoke left, but I don't think that's name calling. I think that's accurate because they are sponsored by giant corporations with, lame ideas, nothing avant-garde like they pretend to be. But when you see so much overheated rhetoric, and you see folks saying, it's just beat the other. It's at that point when we need to have cooler heads prevail and voices emerge, not just mine, but many, many others who are calling for true peacemaking and bridge building. That's what we need in this country. It's when the temperature's so hot that you need to have some fresh air. You need to get outside and get some fresh air. That's what A Neighbor's Choice is trying to do. I saw this story in the Washington Post and MSN. It says, Rush Limbaugh is ailing and so is conservative talk radio industry. Rush Limbaugh, the most successful talk radio host in history, is ailing, and so is the medium he helped revolutionize over the past 30 years. So basically, just looking at the conclusion of the article, it says he noted that sports talk radio has fared relatively well by featuring hometown personalities yakking about local team. I say yakking, They always try to disparage sports. What's wrong with talking about sports? But hiring local hosts is an expensive proposition. Rosenwald said AM radio is in imminent danger unless someone comes along to invest enough to enable it to become a local medium again. All of this doesn't mean the era of hyperbolic, confrontational conservative talk exemplified by Limbaugh is coming to an end. The medium might be in trouble, but the conservative message is already moving to new delivery systems. Right-wing media is still a massive growth industry, says Hemmer. When Limbaugh's show goes dark, it will be the end of an era, but it's hard to imagine that too much will change. It will take a while for new outlets to gain the type of trust that Limbaugh has, but all in all, we're living in a political culture Limbaugh helped create, and it's likely it will continue to exist long after his show ends. So, of course, they want to paint this narrative with the partisan dripping off the page, partisanship. But the question remains, can this medium, can talk radio become a place of peacemaking? Can it be a place where conversations can start and spread, where people are vigorously excited about actually uncovering the truth together, learning the truth about something like nutrition, which affects us all, learning the truth about what's possible for dealing with illnesses without using side effect-ridden drugs and therapies, learning the truth about how we can, create energy too cheap to meter without relying on government-subsidized, green industry scams that really don't have the real formula down for abundant, clean, cheap energy. Can we have a show where we can bring left and right together in a way where we can say, okay, what's your grievance and what's your grievance? Let's work this out together and let's find where the truth is. Can we have that again? I think that talk radio doesn't have to be pigeonholed into this kind of vitriolic painting that the media wants to put it in, rightly or wrongly. I think that this medium can be used for a renaissance of repentance, repenting of the things that we've used to kind of take for granted. Talk radio does have a lot of blame on its hands in a lot of the problems that we've got today, right? Because it was talk radio that pushed for these endless wars oftentimes. And that's wrong. And they lost a lot of moral credibility by pushing, we got to do Iraq one more year. We can't cut and run, And it was talk radio that did play a role in selling us on unjust wars. And I think it's because of the failure of those wars to pan out the way that they were sold to people as, that people started to say, you know what? It's time to be very aggressive in chasing after, the villains among us, right? Because we feel a lot of guilt, all of us in America, in the West, to varying degrees, about how things didn't pan out the way we wanted, how folks are in debt that they shouldn't be in debt for, with college student loans, or wars have happened, and people have had suffering that shouldn't have happened, maybe, because these wars were sold based on faulty information, at best. And people feel a lot of bitterness. They don't know what to do, and so they turn to these new iterations of ideology, like the woke stuff. And they say, here's my tribe. This tribe will give me justice. This tribe will tell me who needs to repent. And it's never us, right? You see, that's the thing ideology does. It always points the blame at somebody else. It never allows for that introspection to say, hey, how can I, stop scapegoating? How can I understand that human nature is fallen, universally so, and that you cannot quarantine the problems, injustices, and oppression into one identity group. You just can't do it. That we have to wrestle with the human heart Solzhenitsyn said that the line between good and evil it cuts through the heart of every human being. That's what we need to talk about. How to remove massive amounts of monopoly power in government and its alliances with big business. How to remove that centralization of power out of the hands of mere mortals. That's a humility that humanity needs to recognize and to address. We need to have it, that we cannot map out the world for our neighbors. We cannot tell them what's going to work for them. You can say that's laissez-faire, but it's not. It's called humility. It's the idea that you cannot map out the plans for everybody else. You can't tell the Middle East how they're supposed to run their mayors and how they're supposed to deal with gender issues. You can't tell other people around the world how to run their life. And you cannot tell your neighbor how to talk and all this stuff. This kind of assumption that somehow we can play God with people is at the heart of our cultural problem. Politics is just a symptom of a culture that's just addicted to this idea of might makes right and let me be God and I'll tell everybody else how to sort their life out. Meanwhile, there's no introspection. There's no looking in the mirror and saying, you know what, it's not that team that's just the problem. It's the whole concept of centralizing power into mere mortals' hands. It's what we all know about in the stories like Lord of the Rings, where you have this ring of power. And we know, no matter how good and noble the person is as a hero, that it will corrupt them at the end of the day. And that the only solution is to throw that ring of power into the hellfire from which it came. Why can't we talk about that today? Why do we have to entrench ourselves into trench warfare and go about demonizing and attacking other people? Oh, you didn't demonize Trump enough. You're a bad team. Oh, you're whatever. The same thing goes for those who just want to demonize the left, right? That's the kind of conversation we have to foster. I think that talk radio can be a place of fostering that humility, of having real conversations with people who vitriolically disagree in one setting, but if we bring them together, perhaps we can have some healing, some understanding. We can bring people out of their collective possession. Because that's what happens with people. They get caught up and they get possessed by the spirit of the crowd. The spirit of MAGA, the spirit of wokeism, the spirit of this, or that, this, that. If you don't like my team, then you're a monster. If you don't hate who I hate, then you're a monster. This is just, it's immature, it's ridiculous, and it won't help anybody. It won't help any of the problems that we all agree are persistent in our lives. I believe, as it pertains to the folks who are left behind in real suffering, examples like folks behind bars for nonviolent crimes, if we don't come to their aid now, we won't have a leg to stand on when it comes to having a moral authority for new laws that could come about that criminalize speech, association, ownership of guns. Those are all nonviolent things too. But a lot of people want to criminalize aspects of those things as a kind of preemptive coercion. Well, if we allow you to own a gun that we're scared of, it might, a bad guy might use it in a horrible way, and that can happen. But it's this idea that preemptively we're going to use violence to take this nonviolent thing away because it's not violent to own a gun inherently. And we're going to preemptively use agents with guns called government to stop you from owning certain guns because you could do violence with them if you're a bad person. And the same thing goes for speech. We can't allow you to speak because you could, cause someone to feel marginalized, and that's violence. So therefore, we're going to censor your speech or your association or your religious affiliation or whatever. And if we don't, and I know because there's a lot of folks in conservative circles that say, I don't want to get involved with justice reform. That's something for the left. I don't agree with that. It's actually what Christians are supposed to do. We're the ones who are supposed to visit those who are in prison. And part of visiting those in prison is making sure they're not in there for a ridiculous reason in the first place. Part of that Christian that Christian call to to see the person in prison and to see that Christ is in that person is this ability to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't put them in there in the first place. Maybe we shouldn't separate people from their kids for decades because they got in with the wrong crowd and they found an easy, way to have camaraderie with the wrong crowd selling drugs, and they get caught up in a conspiracy charge. Maybe we shouldn't, scapegoat people for addictions that we don't have, but maybe they reflect addictions that we do have. A lot of people are addicted to corn syrup. A lot of people are addicted to, pharmaceutical prescription drugs. A lot of people are addicted to working too much, right? Gambling, what have you. But we have to have a criminal class of people who are addicts that we cast outside of our camps to make us feel better about our own particular addictions. It's just, we can't have that. We need to have reconciliation. We need to drop the scapegoat and recognize that we can see ourselves in our neighbor. That's what we need to foster in talk radio. I hope we can do it together. I'm David Gronowski. We'll take a quick break live on A Neighbor's Choice and resume in just a moment. Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
Some out-of-the-area law firms advertise that they are the largest. Do you think large firms help your case? Possibly, but your case will receive personal care from local attorneys Catania and Catania. They are family-owned, Tampa Bay attorneys representing clients who have experienced auto and motorcycle accidents. Your case with Catania and Catania will seek to get a settlement in your favor expeditiously. Catania and Catania, serving Tampa Bay families for over 28 years. Referrals on request. Get the local law firm that will care for your case from beginning to end. They don't get paid if you don't get paid. Catania and Catania, putting families first. Car accident, motorcycle accident, call the local attorneys. Catania and Catania. Offices Tampa. Not attorney spokesperson.
Hi, this is Gary from Good Faith Home Buyers, and I buy houses cash. If you own your house and want to sell it fast, call me at 727-330-6224. That's 727-330-6224. I can pay cash and close fast. I buy houses in any condition, any price range, and any location. I'm not a realtor or associated with any realty company. I'm a private real estate investor who buys several houses a month and wants to buy more. I'll buy inherited houses, divorce houses, behind in payment houses. I'll even buy my tenant won't pay me the rent houses. Do you own a house that is trash and needs thousands of dollars in repairs? Great, because I love buying junky houses. I buy vacant houses, abandoned houses, condemned houses, and foreclosure houses. If you own a house and want to sell it fast, call me at 727-330-6224. That's 727-330-6224.
Mike Capel here, serial entrepreneur. Patriot Software provides American businesses with easy, cloud-based, premium accounting software and full-service payroll for up to 100 employees. Business owners love the simplicity, the price, and our U.S.-based support. And accountants love the powerful capabilities. Check out our nearly perfect 5 out of 5-star ratings.
Keep your time and money.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski, your host. We're exploring the news together in a new kind of conversation. You can go to our website at neighborschoice.com. If you want to listen to this podcast, you can go to neighborschoice.com and you'll see all the episodes. We break them down by hour. We do 2 hours of live radio a day, and we release them as 2 podcasts, 1 hour each, or about 40-something minutes each. That allows for folks to have these in more to-go formats. Here's a story that kind of encapsulates the problem that we face. This is in basnews.com. U.S.-led coalition convoy enters northeast Syria. A convoy of the U.S.-led coalition forces on Saturday entered Syria and headed to its bases northeast of the country, a monitor revealed. Citing its local activists, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported that nearly 50 military vehicles and trucks carrying military and logistical equipment entered Syria through the border crossing of Al-Walid. A convoy was relocated from the Kurdistan region, SOHR noted, adding that it headed to the bases of the international coalition in the countryside of Hasaka. According to the Britain-based monitoring group, this is the 9th coalition convoy to enter Syria since the beginning of 2021. So, it looks like Biden's being a good, useful little tool. He's going to go along and do what the status quo wants, which is more war, more control over all these different key segments of the geographical landscape. And all those folks that pat themselves on the back saying, oh, look, I'm so righteous. I voted for Biden. Wow, we're so good. They don't want to see this. And the television will do everything they can in their power with their broken monopoly on information to not let them see it, to not let them see what they did, to endorse perpetual expansion with regime change chaos. These folks, they show that they are bigoted in their moral outlook because they don't care that perhaps more regime chaos and insurrection chaos will be fueled by Biden in countries like Syria, Damascus. Somehow the people of Damascus, it's okay if they have insurrection chaos with really horrible, bloody results on a scale unimaginable to American cities. Well, because our team won, and the television told me that the good guys won. You have clowns like, Stephen Colbert saying, Biden winning or whatever is like licking the cake batter off of the bowl. That doesn't seem like cake batter to the folks who have to live in the war zones that Biden and Obama and so forth have created all over the world for no reason other than greed and power lust and a desire to rule the world through fallen human beings. That doesn't taste like cake batter for folks living in Damascus, Stephen Colbert, but you wouldn't understand that, would you? You just wouldn't understand that, I guess. You just don't seem to have the ability to put yourself in other people's shoes and realize that you being triggered by Trump's stupid rhetoric isn't the end-all be-all for folks who might be the target of some nasty, horrible regime change chaos that Biden and Harris will unleash in places like Syria. You see, that's an inconvenient fact for the folks who like to pat themselves on the back. Oh, what a good thing we've done. Look at us. We got rid of a casino mogul from presidency. Wow, we're really edgy, yeah. He said horrible, mean things, but, that's the thing. Mean words are worse than violence for these folks. Sticks and stones may break people's bones, but words forever hurt them. That's the establishment left. And a lot of folks are drawn into their warped house of mirrors. And they have callous disregard for the horrible status quo that they just voted to embrace and dial up to the next level. Obama gave me soaring rhetoric, so somehow that makes his horrible record of violence around the world with his foreign policy okay. Oh, okay. Genius. That is genius. It's genius how much people can self-justify their own participation in oppression. And so the woke stuff is just the latest version for folks benefiting from that rigged system to pat themselves on the back and say, hey, look, I feel great. I'm using all the right rhetoric. I'm saying all the right hashtags. I'm voting for the right corporatist. So I'm good. I'm good. I'm being mean to older people because they're old, outdated boomers or conservatives or whatever, and there's this self-righteous insanity. Won't be able to protect them from the horrible reality of that which they openly embrace by voting for and perpetuating this bad status quo that we have. It won't be able to shield their conscience. So expect more desperate attempts to project their shame onto others. Expect more desperate attempts to quarantine guilt by talking about Rice Krispie treats rather than the body bags that will pile up around the globe because of Biden and Harris. That's what they'll do to try to change the subject. That's what they'll do to whistle past the chaos and carnage that they are embracing. But the truth is coming out because we live in a digital age, and the TV media and their extensions in Silicon Valley cannot hide the reality of the bad policies that we see continually tried over and over again. The truth comes out, and this woke stuff won't protect their little precious self-righteous consciences from what they've done. They want to say, oh, the kids in cages were somebody else. No, it was you guys. You voted for Obama and he did it. They want to say, oh, it's, all the horrible things that have happened to people of color, that was from Donald Trump. No, it happened from Obama. It happened from Clinton. It happened from Bush. Trump was just a steady status quo on the policy mostly, but he didn't want to go into wars. And that's why they turned low information people like the McWoke left against him into a hysteria. He was just another statist. But the television wants war. They want war. And they had to distract people with Trump's rhetoric. They say, hey, look at his rhetoric. That's the worst thing I've ever seen. He's a Hitler. Meanwhile, they're pushing and encouraging Trump to try to extend and expand his war efforts. But he didn't go long enough, so they had to get him out of the place and put in someone who is the perfect candidate, someone who's barely even knows where he's at. The perfect candidate for the unelected bureaucrats to just do the steady status quo, enriching the few at the expense of suffering and bondage to people all over the world. You won't see any hashtags started by CNN about folks who are in real slavery in Libya because of Obama, Clinton, and Biden and what they did there. You won't see any hashtags from them. You won't hear the World Economic Forum talk about what happened to the folks in Syria because of Obama administration funding Al-Qaeda. You won't hear about that. You will hear what they want you to hear to perpetuate their power grabs in the name of victims. But we have to speak out in solidarity of all victims, no matter who they are, no matter what their background is, no matter what their gender is, no matter what their sex is or whatever, their race, all that stuff that they try to distract us with. We have to reach out and be in solidarity with every human being around this world to protect the human against the lie of the crowd. That's what Jesus is bringing about into history, a personhood revolution, and you and I get